Hey KW community, thank you again for joining us in store for one of our bite-sized workshops. Today we are with Paula Fitzgerald again. She is going to be showing us how to make figurines out of fondant. So please welcome Paula Fitzgerald from Charles and Violet to show you how to do these. Ask questions and we'll hopefully be able to answer those for you. And I hope you enjoy. Welcome, Paula.
Hi, great to see you. So as Jo said, this one is a little bit more advanced. What we'll be making is a figurine. I've chose a lion just to go with our whole jungle theme that we had last time. The basic structure for this is kind of the same for sitting people and sitting animals, elephants, giraffes, any sort of thing like that. So I thought this is a really good one to start with if you are progressing from making little flat decorations and you want to go to like a 3D figurine. So I've done these a little bit ahead of time, so we'll go through each of the stages. There is a bit of pre-drying for this, so allow yourself enough time, like a good hour, hour and a half to make these. So what I'm going to start with, I'm going to start dyeing the colour. So we are actually using fantastic pre-coloured fondant. This fondant is fantastic and it holds, it stays really, really nice and soft. But what that means is when we want to make figurines, we need to add cellulose to it. So what cellulose does, or often known as tylose powder, is it makes it dry a lot quicker and it firms it up so that it will hold its shape. So if I didn't have tylose powder in my fondant, this would all sag down, the little feet would fold down, the ears would fold down eventually as it starts to dry. So we make sure that we put enough cellulose into our fondant so it becomes like gum paste. It becomes really, really nice and firm, and that's how we get figurines that stay up. So what we'll start with is we'll start with our yellow. So the fondant comes in really small containers as well as the large one. So if you only need it for a little bit, these can be really cost effective. So I find this yellow a little bit bright. It's good for some things, but for this today, we're actually going to tone it down. So what we do is first, when it comes out of the container, we want to give it a really, really good knead. So it'll be a little bit more crumbly. We want it to be nice and smooth and pliable. So knead it, and the heat of your hands will soften it up and bring it all together.
So Paula, how long does the fondant last for once it's out of the container?
This fondant actually stays soft for quite a while. So as long as you wrap it up in its little bag and put the lid on, you'll get a good few months, if not a year, out of it. Fondant can be frozen as well. So if you find that you've got a large amount of fondant and you only need, one or two colours and you don't need it for another year, put it in the freezer. It'll last, and you just take it out in a little while, a couple of days before you need it to defrost at room temperature, and it'll be fine.
And I've just looked on the shelf. We've got about 12 different colours in the Fontastic,
Yeah.
and we have 3 different sizes. You were saying in the last class how good the small ones are.
They are, and the purple in this range is beautiful. It's really, really nice. And you can add white to it as well, and you can get some beautiful colours. Just adding a little bit of brown to this. So what brown does is it tones the brightness down. So always push from your shoulder when you're kneading. Okay, so we've mixed this in. So you can still see my yellow is still yellow. This is the original one. So you can see it's kind of just softened that bright fluoro colour. So when we are making custom colours, especially for figurines, just make sure that you've made enough, because there's nothing worse than needing to do feet or hands or ears and not actually having enough of your custom colour available. So let's pop that in there. What I am going to do is I will show you how to make this and how to adjust your proportions so that should you want to make this bigger or even smaller, you're able to adjust it. So what I actually use for the head, just to make it a little bit lighter, is I use a styrofoam ball. So this is not glued on. I've just popped a stick in there just for ease of working on it. So for the head, it's a styrofoam ball in there. So that also makes sure that it's a really nice round shape, and it makes it light so it's not top heavy and your figurine is less likely to topple over. So when I make when I make figurines for larger cakes, I just use a bigger styrofoam ball as the head. So this size, it's about 10, 12 centimetres tall. This one would be a perfect size to make to fill the whole top of a 7 or 8 inch cake. So you can make a real statement sort of piece figurine. So these you can just buy from craft stores, anything like that. So we'll start with the head because we want to pre-dry this. So what we're going to do is pinch a little bit of fondant off. I'm not going to add Tylose powder to all of this because while it's staying here on my bench, it might go too hard for me. So I'm just going to add Tylose when I need it. So I'm going to add a tiny bit to this. I don't need too much. I just want to make sure that the fondant will be firm enough so that when I start pushing the ears and the face in, it doesn't start to tear. So knead this again. And then tuck all your rough bits underneath, smooth bits on top, and we roll. Where did my rolling pin go? There it is. So you can use a little bit of corn flour on your bench if you need it. It's actually not too bad on this wooden chopping board. Okay, so I'm making this a little bit thicker than I need to. Still about 5 ml. And then what we've done here, we've got some glue. So all this glue is the cellulose powder mixed with a little bit of water. You only need a pinch to a couple of tablespoons of water, and it becomes like a gel consistency. So that's quite thick. We don't want it to run all over our figurines. We want it to be really nice and sticky and hold everything in place. So a little bit of glue underneath. I'm going to make this a little bit thinner. So this is always good to be made in advance. So it can be a little bit tricky. We just work slowly and we just squeeze this all the way around. Then we trim off any excess so it doesn't weigh our fondant down.
What kind of cake, what do you put on, I don't know if you're about to tell us this, but what your cake topper,
Yep.
would you do that with fondant to sit the fondant on, or do you do buttercream, or does it vary?
So if you just want to stick the figurine straight into a cake, it can be anything really. You can have it on a buttercream cake, you can have it on a fondant cake, ganache cake, anything, plain cake. It's all good. So once the figurine is dry, you'll actually be able to take it out and just manoeuvre it wherever, and we'll have a stick all the way through. So it will stay nice and firm on your cake. So what we've done, cover this all up, get it as smooth as possible and then let this dry. So here's one I've prepared earlier. So it's nice and firm for no other reason other than when we stick the ears and the face on, we're going to be pushing it a little bit, so we don't want it to split. So while that's drying, we'll get onto the body. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to
Is there any limit to the amount of times that you can keep rolling it out? Like Play-Doh, can you keep redoing it on the spot?
You can. You'll find that if you are adding Tylose powder to it, it will start to get really dry. So the more you knead it, it will actually start to go a little bit crusty. It's just drying out as you knead it. So if you find that it's kind of past the point of saving it, just start again. Start again with some fresh fondant. Yeah. Alrighty, so we're just going to break a little bit of fondant off to do our body. So what I like to do first is just to get our proportions right. I haven't added any Tylose to this yet. I'm just going to do a rough shape just to get the height that I'm working with. So we want the shape about that sort of size, and we just look at it against the head and make sure it's kind of the right proportions. It's always cute with figurines like this where their head's a bit oversized. So we will use this. Once I like the size of the body there, then I'm going to add Tylose powder to it. So give it a really good knead. Make sure it's all nice and smooth again, and that's how we get all our cracks out of our fondant figurines. So once it's nice and smooth, then we're going to roll it into a ball. And the heat of your hands will smooth out any creases. So we've just made this teardrop shape. So all I did, I'll show you this again in a second, is I rolled it into a ball, as close to a ball as you can get. And then we use the side of my hand just to taper one side. So that's kind of like a teardrop shape. And this will be the height of our figurine. So depending on if you want a little bit taller, skinnier lion. And then this is still rounded, so we're going to sit this on the bench and smooth it down a little bit so it has like a little flat area to sit on. Use the palm of your hand rather than your fingertips so you don't leave any marks. And then that is our body. So what we do is we get our skewer, and when we are poking it into this styrofoam, it can get stuck. So if you are going to make your figurine on this, give it a little, like loosen it up a little bit before you pop your figurine in, because once it goes in and you've made it, you won't be able to get it out. So I'm just going to put my skewer all the way from the top of the neck all the way down. It's going to come out the bottom, and I'm going to put it in the hole that I pre-made, like that, so that it dries nicely. Okay. So while that dries, I made one earlier. So nice and dry. And what I like to do as well is sometimes it's a little bit lopsided, it's a bit pudgier on one side. I like to actually look at it, and sometimes it looks like a belly, so I like to use that as the belly of my lion. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to add a little bit of light yellow as the tummy part. So all we do there is we're just going to add a little bit of white. So I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to that. Okay, so we're just getting a little bit of the lighter yellow. I'm just going to add a little bit of corn flour on my bench. My hand's getting a little bit sticky. Let me just roll this out nice and thin. So to make it, if you're going to use it, cut it out. If you're going to freehand it, I'll show you how. We're going to make a teardrop shape. So we make it into a round ball, taper one side just like we've done all along, and then we flatten this down. And because we've let this set a little bit, we can actually press this on. So add a tiny bit of glue just to the front, not too much. And then we're going to get this and we're going to press it on. I always make it a little bit smaller and thicker than I need to, so that I can actually just press it on. So you can pick that up in your hand, just manoeuvre that all the way down. You can smooth it out. Okay, and if you like, you can even add some details, like some little furry details in there. Add a belly button. There we go. Okay, so then we let that sit back there. So we're going to add arms and legs, but we want to make sure that we've added our tummy in so that our arms and legs can go around. So we'll keep this yellow because we're not going to use it right away. Make sure we keep it in the little plastic bag and into the container just so it doesn't dry out too much. Okay, so I'm just going to use my new yellow. That one's drying out a little bit, so we'll get some more. So we're going to do the arms and legs now. And again, I haven't added Tylose to this lot yet, so I'm just going to do a practice arm size. Get whatever you reckon. Making another teardrop shape, just a little bit longer. And we measure it against the body and we see how big or small it's going to be. So obviously this is going to be a little bit too big. So we measure it in and then we pinch it where we want our arm to stop, and then that's our arm size. And so that we get two arms the same size, we roll it into a ball first, and then we roll another ball to match that one, and we know we've got two arms approximately the same size. All right, so once we've done that, and only when I've got the right size arms, I'll dip it in a little bit of Tylose powder before I attach it to the body. So I'm going to pre-glue this now. So we're just adding a little bit of glue from the top of the shoulder area, like this. I like to do my glue early so it goes tacky, so that our arms don't slide off when we add them on. Okay, so one arm, roll it into a ball, taper one side, just like we've done. This time we're making them a little bit longer. Dip it into a bit of Tylose. Okay, roll it. Just want to get these creases out. So we press it and the heat of our hands smooths all the creases. So taper one side. And then I like to lay them side by side so I've roughly got the same sort of shape. And then with the arms, whoops, we press to make like a little paw. And then what I like to do is just to define that wrist. Just like that. So you've kind of got like that sort of paw shape. So press it just with your fingertips, and then underneath the markings that you've done, you just go underneath just to make like a little wrist. Okay. Smooth that. You can start shaping that a little bit more.
So how long, Paula, would you normally spend making one of these figurines?
For a larger one, definitely give yourself about an hour, because the last thing you want to do is rush this. Yeah, I'd give yourself an hour. Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit more glue to the top here where it's going to stick on. So I've just wrapped this around the back of the neck, over the shoulders. I haven't attached the paws yet, but what I'll also do is I'll use this soft part of my hands just so I don't get finger marks in it. And then here is where we can position his little hands. And it's also cute if you want him to hold anything, you pre-make that. He can hold a candle or something. Just get that in there. And then we get our little tool and we just do his markings in there for his paws. Okay. And if you find there's any cracks or anything, I've got a couple of cracks on this side. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue in them and then just press them closed. Okay, and for the legs, same sort of thing. Pinch a little piece off. Roll it. Measure the size of the leg that you want. The leg's going to start all the way from the back and come to the front. So we're going to stop it about here because we don't want oversized legs. So put that in there. We roll a ball and we match it so it's about the same size.
So if the viewers at home got any questions so far, let us know and we'll answer them online.
Okay. So I'm going to add a little bit of Tylose powder. And again, same shape, same teardrop shape for the legs. So roll it into a ball, taper. And then for the foot, we do similar to what we did for the paws. Pinch that and just kind of form it into a foot. Okay, so it's like a little foot. And you can use your ball tool just to kind of give that a bit of a paw. and shape it. Okay, so there's our little foot. Then we're going to pre-glue, wrap it around, position the foot in the front first, and then the excess that you have can get tucked around its bottom. Okay, and then put his little foot up. So obviously we do 2 of those, and I have skipped ahead, and we've got 2 legs on now. And what I did for this as well is I just rolled tiny bits of the pale colour that we used on the belly, and I just put that on the foot just for a bit more detail. What I also did on this one is I just added a little tail, and I put a little orange teardrop on there and just pressed the orange teardrop on. So what I did was I made sure I attached the tail from the bottom, and then I also attached it against the body so it's not freestanding. Attach everything on, and what we're going to do is we're going to start on the head. So this body can just sit here and harden and get nice and dry. We're going to add the details to the head. So what we need first is the muzzle, and we'll use our light colour for that one. Okay, so with this we need an oval piece of fondant just to go on the front. So we don't want it too big. But with this again, like if you put it on and it looks oversized, you can rip it off and start again. So just before I glue it on, I like to just place it over the front just to kind of see how it's going to look. That might be a little bit big, so we'll take a little bit off. So a little bit of glue. If the ball's a little bit wonky or it has a crack or anything in it, now's the time to find that, because we're going to cover it up with the muzzle. So find the little area that you'd like to use as the front. Pop a little bit of glue on. Roll a ball, and then we're rolling an oval sausage shape. Don't want to roll it too big. Just going to flatten it a little bit and attach that on. And then again, I'm just going to use the soft part of my hand just to press it on the side so it adheres there. I don't want to really get my finger into it because then I get finger marks. So you press that all the way around. Then we're just going to do the markings for the mouth and the nose. So any sort of sharp tool that you've got, just a line up the middle. And where we're going to put its little nose. Just going to do the markings. I always do the markings ahead of time just so I know where the eyes and things are going to go.
So if anyone's looking for the tools, these are the Mondo fondant modelling tools. They are $13.95, and you should be able to get them online or in store. And then you have everything you need for both the basic class and this master class that Paula's doing.
So I'm just going to skip ahead and quickly do the ears while my yellow is out. Ears are just little circles, and we're going to use the lighter colour inside them. So I've added a little bit of Tylos to this because we don't want our ears to get too droopy. And for this one, I'm just going to cut this ball in half and make 2 round ears. So I've been playing with fondant for a little while today, and my fingers are getting a bit warm. So if you find your fingers are just getting warm and it's all getting a bit sticky, just stop, reset, give your hands a really good wash and a really good dry, and then start again. Okay, so we're just going to get these balls, flatten them a little bit. So just a little bit of the white on the inside. Then I'm using the ball tool just to squish it a bit. And then I'm going to chop the bottom of this off, just so the ear has somewhere flat to attach. You can also use this to make like little details on it, just so it kind of looks, you can add as much detail to these as you want. You can even add, you can even snip the fondant and make little curly line hair and ears and stuff. It's really cute. Okay, so what I will also do is I'll pre-mark where I'm going to put the ears so I can stick them on. So we want them little bit further back. I'm just going to do lines there, just so I know where they go. Then I'm going to actually put glue on this.
So tell us again, is the head quite dry now?
Yep, so that was the head that I pre-made. I made that one last night. You can just let it dry for an hour or so, or just until you finish the body. It's just a handy tip because we are pushing the muzzle in and pushing all the bits and pieces in. This one is still a little bit soft, so if we started doing that, we'd get a really like a rough look. We get our finger marks in this one, so it's always nice to kind of let it sit where possible. So I've made his little ears. I'm going to plonk them on now while they're nice and soft. So I added the glue to the ears, and then I let it sit for a little while just so that the glue would go nice and tacky and my ears wouldn't slide off. So once they're on, I'm not going to play around with them because I will end up pushing them off. So just kind of press them on. If needed, you can get your little ball tool in there and rejig the ear. But I'm going to leave it like that. And we'll start on the eyes. So, okay, so we're doing eyes. So we need our white. And some of the darker colours of fondant can stain, so if you are going to use white, make sure you wash your hands beforehand, because otherwise you'll get bits of black and other colours into it. So with the eyes, you can cut them out. I'm just going to make balls of white and press it on and flatten them. Okay, so little ball of white, both of them roughly the same size. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm just flattening these as evenly as possible to do the black. So I didn't make the balls of white too big because I don't want really bulgy eyes. I made it quite small so that when I flatten them, they're still quite big, but they sit a little bit more flush. Okay, and then we add some black for the dots of the eye. So with the eyes and pieces that you don't need to hold their shape, you don't need to add Tylose powder to everything. So with the eyes, I'm not adding anything to it. I'm just using it straight as it is. I'll just make sure these tiny bits are about the same size. And then we'll just roll the ball. Whoops. I've done a little dot of glue on the white. I'm just going to plonk that in the middle. And then we flatten that down so it doesn't look too crazy. Okay, and what I also like to do is add like a little white dot. It's just like a really tiny, small dot. I call it like a little eye sparkle. So what I've done here is my other one that I made earlier. So I added just a couple of dots of white, just do a tiny bit of glue. It just adds a little bit more character and a bit more life to your figurines. So what I will do now is I'll add the nose last because I might actually make some pink fondant. So this head can actually come off our stick because we didn't glue it on. So we pull that out. So what we will do is we'll trim this and then we'll attach this onto our figurine. So this I made ahead of time. So if you find that the head doesn't sit quite right because the shoulders are already hard, you can add a tiny bit of yellow fondant to that just so it squishes in a bit better. I'll show you. So we want to leave enough for the head. We don't want anything poking through. So we just trim that here. So now he's got his little head on, so his head can move around. We want that to stay in place. If you can see a bit of the stick, then I might actually add a little bit of yellow fondant, just so it's a bit more of a nice seam around it. So all we do there is we get our little paintbrush and we just add a little bit of glue around the shoulder area, and you can do it on the stick as well, because the last thing you want is for its head to fall off. Okay, just a tiny bit of yellow. And then we push that on. And let's add a little bit more glue. Whoops. Then we can add a little bit more glue on the neck area as well. So I like to make these figurines and then give them time to dry overnight at the very least. So you can make these like a couple of days in advance. And we can also just push the excess up. Okay, and you can tilt his head a little bit. He doesn't need to be looking directly at you. It kind of adds a little bit of character as well when you give him a bit of a head tilt. So that's where we're at. We're going to add his nose in. And if you do want to leave it like this, like a lion cub or lioness, we'd stop here. I'll show you actually how to add some like orange mane hair behind it. But before I forget, let's actually make a pink nose. So you can actually use your fondant to colour fondant. So if you've got red fondant, you can make pink, just add a touch of it. I don't, so I'm just going to add a little bit of gel colour to my white fondant, just for a really soft pink nose. So I've only added a really, really small amount, and it's a really, really vibrant pink. Okay, so the marking that we made earlier for his nose, I'm just going to put a little bit of glue in there and along the top. Roll it into a ball and then into like a little tic-tac shape for the nose. Then we put that over the top of the muzzle. Oh, it stuck to my finger. And then I'm just going to use my finger just to pull that down a little bit. Just like that. Okay, you can try and fill that whole area. And you can also use your tools just to reshape that. Okay, so with the mane, I'm going to do it similar to how I did the cupcake toppers. So we're just going to cut circles. So I've added a little bit of Tylo's powder to my orange, and I'm going to roll this out. Okay, so we get this nice and smooth. It's about 3 or 4 mil thick. And then we are going to cut out circles. So we'll go a bit smaller. So I'm going to go a little bit thinner because that looks a bit thick. So now I've gone down to about 2 mil thick. And before we cut it out, we just want to make sure it's not sticking to our surface. We're just going to cut out some circles. And what we're going to do is I'm going to put some glue on the back of its head now. I'm going to do it section by section. So we're going to add the mane around the back, and it might end up touching the shoulders. So we put it around the ear first, maybe even a little bit on the back of the ear. So you can use fondant glue or water to stick all these together. Fondant glue will show, so if you make a bit of a mistake and you leave it, you'll actually see the silvery trail of the fondant glue. Water doesn't really leave that much behind. So what I'm going to do is I'm just kind of folding this in half, and then I'm just going to press it on. And my fingers are a bit big for this, so I'm going to use my tool. Just like that.
There, you're just pushing them so they join.
Yeah, I'm just pushing it because I've put my glue on, and I also want to adhere it to the back of the ear because we don't want it to kind of fall off. So we're just going to adhere it to any sort of point that it is touching. We're just going to overlap them. Just do it one at a time. It's kind of like we're just making frills. So if you find that this keeps opening up, just add a dab of glue there so it adheres at that point so it doesn't open up. And all we're doing is just adding like a little bit of colour. You won't see too much detail in this part, but we're just adding some colour and texture just to the back. Okay, and then we're just going to do this as far around as we can. Kind of just creating like a little frill. And these figurines can last for a long time. You will find, depending on where you're storing it, the colour might change. So some of the darker colours tend to go a little bit grey. But what I like to do is, if you do want to keep this for any reason, I just pop it in a airtight container if you can. Otherwise, you can always leave it on your styrofoam and just store it like that. They do lose a little bit of their vibrancy after a couple of years. I think I've had a few kept for 3-4 years, ones that I made Violet when she was a baby. Okay, so let's have a look. That's looking all right. It looks like he's got a bit of a perm. So I'll just do the last 2. I won't fill in the whole lot. But basically, just take your time. As I said earlier, just allow yourself like about an hour to make this, and make this ahead of time. Don't start making this the day of your party or anything like that. Make it ahead of time, let it dry. Also leaves you time for if bits and pieces fall off, you can fix it, so you can redo things. Yeah, don't leave things to the last minute. That is my tip. So we're just going to adhere that. Okay, so I'm not pressing too hard, I'm just kind of adhering it. So when it touches its shoulder, I'm making sure that I put a bit of glue on the shoulder. We'll leave it at that, and I'll show you what it looks like from the back. So all I've done is I've done it like in a bit of a wreath shape. So what I'd normally do is I'd probably add maybe another 3 across the back just to fill that in, so if people are looking from the back, it doesn't look like he's balding. And then from the front, you have a lovely little line come with a mane. And that's it. That's us, Jo.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us, Paula. How clever is she with what she has made there? Look forward to seeing you again in store and on our live streams, and have a great day, weekend, whenever you're watching this. We'll see you soon. Thank you. See you later. Bye.